All right. Welcome to a brand new video on the Target Individual Program, the Target Individual Experience. What you see on the screen in this video, I know it's not like other videos I've done. And the reason why I'm doing this because, just like looking for topics, and I came upon this article. Okay. And this article, it says congenital syphilis is on the rise and it has serious consequences for infants. Okay, so recently, this was actually yesterday, Wednesday, June 8th, and today is the 9th. It is 3:15 a.m. in the morning, so my insomnia, the constant remote monitoring, the constant surveillance inside the home, whenever I touch things, whenever I go into the bathroom, there's police sirens, and car honking, but they do it at a very subtle noise level, I should say. Okay. So anyway, yeah, so I came upon this article, and I'm doing this video not just for us as TIs, but for people in general, because I want you to understand that, particularly within those of us within communities of color, particularly the Black community, the communities where Black people live, one of the weapons that they use against us are STDs, right? And so I'm going to get into a little bit about that. All right, because we know from the Tuskegee experiments where they were giving syphilis to Black men and telling them, giving them injections that is supposed to be penicillin, right? But was giving them a placebo, which didn't do anything, and they went on to infect other people, right? Including their spouses. Okay, so let's deal with this article. I'm going to read a little bit of it, okay? It says sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, are on the rise in the U.S., which is news no one ever wants to hear. Case numbers are up for both gonorrhea and syphilis, including congenital syphilis, which is syphilis passed onto a fetus before birth. An area of particular concern. The CDC reported the number of congenital syphilis tripled from 2016 to 2020, leaping from 641 confirmed cases in the US to 2,148. Out of context, the number by themselves don't tell the full story. 2,148 is, after all, a fraction of the more than 3.6 million babies born in the US in 2020. But the spikes has happened quickly and dramatically, and the disease itself comes with the possibility of severe consequences, including physical deformities and death. The reasons for the surge are complex and include issues of prenatal care access, systemic racism, and inadequate public health messaging. Rosalind Plotzer, MD, MPH, an assistant professor at UCSF, Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, says the disease itself can be addressed through fairly straightforward clinical measures, but controlling the surge in congenital syphilis likely requires an approach as layers it causes. So what is congenital syphilis and what are its symptoms? Congenital syphilis occurs when the fetus becomes infected with syphilis in utero, Dr. Pulser says, which happens when someone has syphilis during pregnancy and the bacteria is transmitted to the fetus via the placenta. The chance of a syphilis-positive person passing it on to a fetus during pregnancy depends on the stage of syphilis and how long the person has lived with it. Researchers says that people with early-stage syphilis are more likely to give birth to babies with congenital syphilis or experience a stillbirth than people with later stage syphilis who have had it for 1 or 2 years. Okay? So people can have syphilis and not have any symptoms at all. This is why it's important that every adult as well as every teenager, okay, should have an STD. Particularly, let me say this, teenagers in general, okay, should be having an STD test every 3 to 4 months, especially if they're sexually active. Okay, so that should be at least 4 times a year, at least 3 or 4 times a year, I should say. For adults, twice a year. You know, I usually get a STD test twice a year, but I've been intimate, haven't had sex in about going on 3 years now. Okay, so yeah, all right. And anyways, let me continue. So congenital syphilis occurs when the fetus become. Did I just read this? Yes, I did, right? So, okay, research says that people with early stage syphilis are more likely to give birth to babies with congenital syphilis or experience stillbirth than people with later stage syphilis who've had it for 1 or 2 years. The consequences of congenital syphilis vary widely, but can be severe and life-threatening for the baby. Note that untreated late-stage syphilis can also be life-threatening in adults. Although it's rare, initial symptoms include sores around the area of infection, such as the genital, and people with syphilis may later develop rashes, fever-like symptoms, and serious health problems, including blindness and paralysis. Prior to birth, possible consequences of congenital syphilis include pregnancy loss or stillbirth, preterm birth, abnormalities within almost every organ system of the infant, including the liver, spleen, lungs, blood, central nervous system, including the brain, bones, and skin. Example, rashes, and lesions. With that said, most infants who are born with syphilis appear unaffected at birth. Dr. Plotzer notes, if left untreated, however, infants with congenital syphilis can develop severe abnormalities that may cause physical deformities, blindness, deafness, or death. That's why infants who are exposed to syphilis during pregnancy need to be tested at birth, even if they appear completely healthy, and treated as needed. Dr. Plotzer says the timing and types of symptoms vary among infants. Some may not test positive until several weeks after birth, so infants should have blood tests done every few weeks. Early signs includes blisters on the hands and feet, bloody or pus-like leakage from the nose, rashes around the mouth, among the nose, mouth, and diaper area, and swollen lymph nodes. All right, so I'm not gonna get too much, read too much more of this article, but understand that there is money to be made, right, in people getting STDs. Okay, and if you think that the health department is going to eradicate STDs, particularly even curable STDs like syphilis, gonorrhea, other forms of STDs that can be cured, then you're not paying attention. Okay? And you always got to look at the dollar signs. You always got to look at these pharmaceutical companies who make drugs to treat STDs. Their bottom line every single year, their profit. Okay. So, anyways, as I was reading this, okay, I posted it on Facebook because it's important that I posted various subjects. Okay. Because again, me being black and understanding that white supremacist war against us is multifaceted, multi-layered. There are many different components that are used, many different tactics, many different methods that are used to destroy us as black people, okay, and to villainize us. All right. And like I said, if you ever notice, whenever there's an outbreak of a STD within poor white communities, the urgency of the state and the health department to curtail those infections, okay? So you'll see a mass drive to test poor whites for STDs and to treat them. Whereas if there are STD outbreaks in the communities in where black people live, I'm not going to say black communities because black people don't own the communities in which they live in. So in the communities where black people live, okay, they don't do that. Okay, they let the infection linger and go on. It's reported, but they don't. Particularly health facilities, particularly Department of Health, they don't see the urgency in curing black people of STDs. And that's just the facts. Okay? That is just the facts. And so what we have a rise in STD amongst black people, particularly younger black people, teenagers, young adults, from 25 to 35, you will see they are the highest risk of infection, not the highest risk, but the highest number of infection, okay, of STDs amongst the black population, okay? And there's a reason for that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another subject, right? Because again, and I'm going to come back into this, right? Because particularly, actually, you know what? Let me continue with this. We're talking about another STD. So one of the other STDs that I posted on Facebook, and I do this every year, okay? So I'm doing it now because when I pulled up this article, started reading it, I posted, and then I said, what other STDs is on the rise? Okay. And then I remember I was watching a news program, and in the news program, the news reporter said something about herpes and how people getting infected with herpes could be a good thing. Okay, this is what they're saying. Now I was trying to find it on the internet, but couldn't find the any article on that. Okay, but I distinctly remember hearing that. And sometimes they'll use the media to say certain things, but then they don't, and then they'll be like, after this commercial, then when they come back to the commercial, they never go on to that story, right? They completely ignore it. Okay, completely ignore it, right? And so they could be planting ideas into people's head who may have herpes to spread it. Okay, so I want you to understand these things. So as TH, you have to be very careful again in who you come in contact with. Okay, and understand that if you have an STD, if you're a TI, if you have an incurable STDs, maybe herpes, AIDS, or what have you, HIV, that they will, if they want to experiment you because you have those disease, they will do it, and they will manipulate you and brainwash you into spreading it and then villainize you. So you got to understand that. Okay, we cannot, they won't leave anything off of the table in order to save their necks, okay, and to throw you under the bus because they don't want people to find out that they experimented on you. Understand that this is what they do. Okay, so where are we at here? Okay, it's not one. I thought I pulled the article up. Let me find another article. Okay, so found the article. I thought I had pulled it up, but apparently I didn't. So I had the link on Facebook, so I had to go to Facebook to, pull up the article. So another STD, right? STD that has been on the rise and continue to rise is herpes. Now, there are many different forms of herpes virus. I think there were like about 100 different herpes virus within that family, right? So there's a herpes virus family. Okay. Now you have herpes simplex virus 1 and herpes simplex virus 2. I think 1 is genital, 2 is, well, it says both are known to cause genital herpes. So let me just read. So how many people in the US have herpes? Herpes simplex virus 1 and herpes simplex virus 2 are both known to cause genital herpes. It is estimated that in the United States, 47.8% of people aged 14 to 49 have the HSV1, while 11.9% of Americans in the same age group have HSV2, according to the World Health Organization 2017. Theoretically, this means that over 195 million people in the United States might have genital herpes. So that's the vast majority of Americans. Okay, but we know the number might actually be somewhere lower than this. But how do you know that? Okay, not every virus infection actually causes symptoms, and if it does, it isn't always in the genitals. Herpes can cause a latent infection, meaning the virus can lie dormant in your system without causing any symptoms. Because of this, not everybody who has herpes knows it, even though the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, estimated that there are around 776,000 new cases of genital herpes in the United States each year. Okay, and this means our estimation of how many people are infected could be way off. So I want you how they word these things. Okay, as I'm reading, what do they say? Right, I'm gonna go back. Right, they said that they know. They said, but we know the number might actually be somewhere lower than this. Okay, so after saying that, that's actually over 195 million people in the United States might have genital herpes. Then the next sentence, they said that they know that it's somewhere lower than this, right? Then, okay, the estimates that they give for yearly infection is 776,000 new cases of genital herpes in the US. And then they said this means our estimation of how many people are infected could be way off, because you also had people who show no symptoms of infections, though they can give you an infect you with herpes, but they may not be to give symptoms, and then maybe later on they will have symptoms. Okay, or imagine this: someone giving you herpes, okay, who have no symptoms. You get an infection, you tell them that they gave you herpes because you haven't had it before, and they'll tell you, they'll say, well, I don't have it. Because when you go to the doctor, they don't, for STD tests, they don't test you for herpes. They'll do for other tests, but they don't test you for that. Only if it shows up in your blood, then they'll, they may not even, they'll tell you, right? Or they won't tell you. Because again, these types of experimentation still goes on. There are doctors who, so unless you get the paper yourself, normally you get an STD test, sometimes you don't hear from the doctor, you call back, they'll tell you, well, if we don't call you, that means everything is good. But that's not always true. Okay? That is not always true. These people continue to experiment on us using many different tactics and many different methods. And this is something that we have to understand. And I'm not talking about the black people here. I'm talking about people in general. And particularly if you live in a certain part of the country certain population. Okay. And also, when it comes to the black experience in America, and not just in America, but in the diaspora around the world, these things happen all the time. These types of experiments happen all the time. And there's a reason for this. And I'm going to explain this in one of the articles that I'm going to read. Okay? So, again, we have to always be thinking when we start to see rise in STDs or new forms of stronger strains of STDs that is happening, right? And the infection of those stronger strains. Okay, a lot of these things are genetically modified. Okay, genetic modification of STDs to make them more resistant to certain penicillin. Okay, and what does that mean for the bottom line of the pharmaceutical companies? It means that now they have to create a stronger penicillin or whatever other medicine they'll use to cure the infection, right? And that means that they can charge you more money for that medicine. Remember, we live in a capitalistic society. Okay, so we can never put nothing past these white supremacists, these capitalists. Okay. So as I was posting these articles, I get a friend request from Facebook. This was, around what time? It's been an hour now, so around 2:37. Okay. And I'm like, it's who the hell sent me a message? Okay. So when I click on the person, click on their the name is the page the Facebook page is Tucci, which means, I guess, blue. Okay. And again, they'll use colors to target you and stuff like that, because I just find it very strange. And usually when I post articles like this, I'm always getting friend requests afterwards, right? And it's usually people from Africa. So I'm saying to myself, this person who sent me this request got to be from Africa. Okay, got to be. All right. And again, these, what the United States and Russia have been doing is paying people, right, in Africa to cause, to post, I would say, propaganda, lies, false information. Okay. And we got to be aware of this. All right. So, of course, if you click on about this person, you'll see Enugu, Nigeria. I already knew it. So when you click on this person, okay, let's go to the video. It's a young kid, right? Well, not since a young kid, he's a young man. Okay. But then I'm like, okay, yeah, got to be the religious. Because in Nigeria, they're brainwashed and heavily indoctrinated with Christianity. Okay. And so I was like, yeah, okay. All right. So again, got a picture of Mercedes-Benz, airplane, all this stuff, right? Again, paid bots with a whole bunch of pictures. Okay, it could be human bots. Okay, they certainly can be human bots. So I am going to I want to accept the request because I love to engage with them, particularly when I know that they're going to use them to target me, and I want to see how they're going to target me. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's move on. So then also, I remember someone, I think it was Dr. Umar Johnson, he was talking about the rise in herpes infection within the lesbian community, right? Lesbian and bisexual community. And there are many women, lesbians, right, are young women who think that if they are lesbians, they can't get an STD. Okay? Many of them think and feel that way because they have been totally ignorant, not being taught that yes, even lesbian women, okay, do get STDs, just as heterosexual people do, just as gay men do. Okay, so I am going to read some of this. So, and then this shouldn't be a shocker, but it's just going to show you how ignorant that a lot of us are, you know, and this is something that needs to be talked about, which isn't again. And this is from 2011. Okay, this is the Clinical Infectious Disease Oxford Academics. Okay, so I try to do when I do my research, I pull up stuff that I do post things and talk about things from sites that deal with these things, whether it be through the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, the the government health website, the public health website, and so forth, or the World Health Organization, or sites that deal with medical journals and articles, on facts, right? So, sexually transmitted infection amongst women who have sex with women. There's apparently a lot of women out there who think about having sex with other women that they can't get STDs. Okay, so and particularly when you see the rise in young black women who are now identify as lesbians or bisexuals. Okay, so women who have sex with women are a diverse group with variations in sexual identity, sexual behavior, sexual practices, and risk behaviors. WSW are at risk of acquiring bacterial, viral, and protozoal sexually transmitted infections, STIs, right? From current and prior partners, both male and female. Bacterial vaginosis is common among women in general, and even more so amongst women with female partners. WSW, again, that stands for women who have sex with other women, should not be presumed to be at low or no risk for STDs based on sexual orientation. And reporting of same-sex behavior by women should not deter providers from considering and performing screening for STIs, including chlamydia, in their patient according to current guidelines. Effective delivery of sexual health service to WSW requires a comprehensive and open discussion of sexual and behavioral risk beyond sexual identity between care providers and their female clients. Based on the 2002 National Survey for Family Growth, the NFFG, the National Representative sampled a household in the United States. 4.4% of women aged 15 to 44 years reported having a female partner in the past 12 months, and 1.3% report having exclusively female partners in the past 12 months. Using measures of both self-reported sexual identity and sexual behavior, it is estimated that 1.3 to 1.9% of U.S. women are lesbian and and that 3.1 to 4.8 are bisexual. Lifetime same sex behavior is commonly reported by women in large population based survey, ranging from 11.2% of women in the 2002 NSFG to 7.1% of women in the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Although extensive data are available regarding sexually transmitted infection (STI) among men who have sex with men, relatively little has been published about STI prevalence and risk among other sexual and gender minorities, including women who have sex with women. And there's a reason why these things are unreported. There's a reason why they don't have studies, is because, again, the spreading of STDs is big business for pharmaceutical. Okay? And we are conditioned, programmed to do that. And not just that, but there is the covert tactics and method in which is used to hide or not test people who are, particularly women who are in same-sex relationship, who are having threesomes and foursomes and sex parties with other female, what they call toys, sexual toy parties, where they bring out a whole host of sex toys and use them on each other. Maybe somebody's selling them, and sometimes they're not. There's drinking involved. They're not taking precaution, or what have you, or they're taking precaution, but during having sex, things may happen, right? Maybe putting their hands inside of each other and then going to another person and doing the same thing. Okay, so all these things are part of the reason. Okay, and the fact that they don't talk about the spreading of STDs, particularly among women who have sex with other women. Okay, which put them at a bigger risk of contracting STDs like syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, vaginosis, chlamydia, and other host of STDs. Okay, HPV and such. Okay, so the results. Let's go about the results. What is known about the current epidemiology of STIs among SWS? Chlamydia, trichomoniasis, and Neisseria gonorrhea, I guess this must be the proper medical term, infection among WSW have been considered uncommon. Now, why would it be considered uncommon? Okay, earlier studies that include women from STD clinics and sexual health centers reported a prevalence of chlamydia infection among WSW ranging from 0.6% to 3%, and of gonorrhea from 0.3% to 2.8%. However, no data on trichomoniasis or and gonorrhea infection in WSW from community-based or population-based venues are available. And in 2008, Singh et al. Examined chlamydia positivity among WSW age 15 to 24 years tested at family planning clinics participate in the infertility prevention project in the northwestern United States from 1997 to 2005. WSW and women who have sex with both men and women, right? This is WSMW, in the 12 months prior to testing were included. So now you have people who are bisexual. So you have women having sex with men, and then they go have sex with other women and also infecting them, right? If they got an STD infection. And understand is that more women more women give men STDs than men give women STDs. Okay. And again, this is a lie they've been, well, the lie that they've been the talking points, right? Of how they try to get women to, like, women can't do no wrong. It's only men. So again, when the facts are that more women give men STDs than men give women STDs, they don't talk about these things. They will focus on men giving women STDs. All right. I understand the gender wars. They're the ones that are creating the gender wars. And it's funny because, you have these women feminists, these women feminists who think that they're in control of the feminist movement, but they're not. Okay, it is the corporations, the white corporations that are in control of the feminist movement, who uses white women. That corporate wife, whose husband is the CEO, or the the shareholders, who wives are white, they're the one that are leading the so-called feminist movement. But it is a, trying to find the word here. Um, it is a trick. Okay, so they send these women out. They empower women, but really they're not really empowering the majority of women. Okay, only a selective few, and then putting their faces out there to make it seem like they're really empowering women, but they're not. Understand the trick. There was an article written by, I forgot her name, but she was a writer, editor, I think, for one of these, for Cosmos. And she, later on, she came out and she's like, a lot of the stories that we wrote in Cosmos were all lies to sell products, right? So they will lie to you. They lie to us. Men, they lie to men, they lie to women. But right now, women are their biggest source of income. Okay? This is why, particularly in the black community, right, where you see, which is one of the reasons for white supremacist intervention within the family and the family breakup by doing certain things for black women, okay, to give them that mentality, this egotistical way of thinking. So you hear black women say, well, black women run the world. How you run the world? How you run the world? It's still a man's world. So how you running the world? So you have black women going on saying all of this stuff without even understanding and realizing that no, they don't. Okay. And then you start to see more negativity in terms of how they are using black women to promote this hypersexual way of being. That's what they used to say about us black men. That's what they try to villainize us and turn us into. But like I said, eventually, black women will have to understand that they are being tricked. And I just hope it's not too late for them to come to that realization. Okay. So anyway, let me continue. You know, so other STIs can be passed between female partners, including trichomoniasis, syphilis, and hepatitis A. Although it is presumably rare, sexual transmission of human immunodeficiency virus, the HIV, may also occur in this manner. Prior data suggesting potential HIV transmission between female partners based on case report where presumed female-to-female transmission was based on the lack of other identifiable risk factor. A survey of 960,000 female blood donors failed to identify any HIV-infected women who identified same-sex contact as their sole risk factor. Similar results were seen in a much smaller survey of lesbian and bisexual women. And again, but this is 2003, okay? And, when you look for information up to date, they always go back to older studies, right? And so this is why, I was able to find this, all right, from again, this is the Oxford, the Oxford Academy, okay? So Okay, now let me just. This is a pretty extensive article, so I don't want to go through all of this, right? Viral STI, including herpes simplex virus type 1 and 2, and human, I know how to pronounce this, but I just can't right now. HPV occur in women who have sex with women. Data from 2002 NSFG were used to examine self-reported viral STIs among women aged 15 to 44 years old. A history of genital herpes or genital warts was reported more frequently by bisexual women, right? So 15% to 17.2% than by lesbians, women who only have sex with women, okay? Which is 2.3% to 6.7%, and their heterosexual counterpart, right? So again, the heterosexual counterpart, 8.7 to 10%. So bisexual women are the ones who are most frequently to have the herpes virus. Okay, and if they're bisexuals, meaning that they're passing it on to men and women. Okay, so again, you guys can read this. I'm not gonna go into all of this right now, but I really wanted to, you know, talk about this. Right? You ask it. This is from November 16, 2021. You ask it, do lesbian get STIs? So even in 2021, right, there are people out there who are still asking whether lesbians can get STIs. And the answer is yes, they sure can. Okay. So again, I really have to shake my head on this because, um, you know, they can get it from not just, but if, if they don't take care of their, you know, uh, genital areas properly, if they're using toys, okay, if they're particularly, if also yeast infection, so if they're not wearing the proper underwear, or if they're eating too much sugar, stuff like that, right, will give them yeast infections. And if they have a mild yeast infection, they may not even, and trust me, there are women out there who have yeast infection that, it's like they can't even smell the shit. So that's just, again, it's how they grow up, and what activity and their awareness of it, the people around them, their parents talk to them about the truth, talk to them about it. And usually within the religious communities, particularly Christianity, you will find that most people who are tested positive for STDs, and particularly, syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, HIV, are Christians. Okay, so, and that's a fact. All right, so it says, right, some STIs can be transmitted through skin to skin contact, and there are still often bodily fluids involved in sex between two people who have vaginas. The risk of STIs is generally low with sex between two people with vaginas, but there are still a risk. But again, see, when they say this, they're being disingenuous. Okay, because they didn't say only, they just said two people with vaginas. And I just told you guys from the other article that women who identified as bisexual, okay, they are at higher risk of having STDs and transmitted to both men and women. Okay, so the only way to be 100% safe is to not have partner sex. If when you decide you want to have sex, it is important to understand how to effectively reduce your risk. Different sex acts carry different risks. Below, we talk through what you should know about different sex acts and how to make them safely. And I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but talk about oral sex. Um, Hold on here. My Give me a second here. I got to plug in my headset because all right, so okay, so and then they talk about not too many couples use dental dam. Okay. Also, manual sex, fingering, so unprotected manual sex has a fairly low risk of STI, but you can still potentially get chlamydia, syphilis, herpes, HPVs, or genital warts. Okay, so all these things. Sex toys, I've talked about strap on, trimming, using your genitals together without clothes, right? Which again, trimming puts you and your partner at risk of chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, pelvis, inflammatory disease, public lice, trichomoniasis, and HPV. They're also low risk for HIV if fluids are involved. Okay, so if fluids are involved, why is there a low risk of HIV? Okay, or one or both of you has cuts which you can get from shaving or just friction. So how is there a low risk? Again, when we read these things, we have to read them and understand and ask ourselves these questions, right? When it shouldn't be a low risk. Okay, so um all right, so let me move on from here. So one of the trends, particularly being a black person, being a black man, and understanding how they experiment on us and all these other things. So I came upon this article. It was a while back, right? But this article is again, this is written 2022. I couldn't find the original article that was written a couple years ago. This was a couple years ago. Okay, so this is not new, you know. And usually, like I said, when things disappear off the internet, it's because they're trying to go dark. They're trying to hide things, so that people like me who understand the programming, who understand a lot of the methods and tactics used by white supremacists and their war against black people, will not be able to share with other people. All right. So harnessing the power, harnessing the herpes virus to beat a deadly brain cancer. Now, when I read an article like this a couple years ago, they wasn't talking about cancer, you know, because they always got to try to put this positive spin on it, right? To 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 distract you, to say, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, that's a good thing, right? But see, the article that I read prior, like I said a few years ago, wasn't talking about this though. It was talking about how to introduce new viruses to the brain, because what they found is that when they want to infect the brain with a virus, the brain defense system will kill the virus. So what they do is that they hijack the herpes virus. Okay, they hijack it. And what they do is that they use it as a carrier to carry other viruses to the brain. Therefore, the brain defense system does not kill that virus. And then once that virus, you know, it's basically genetic modification of the herpes virus to introduce new viruses into the brain. Okay. And I'm going to try to find an article because I've been looking and I couldn't find it, you know. Like I said, my short-term memory might be shot sometimes when I'm being heavily, monitored or heavily attacked with the psyops, but my long-term memory, you know, it's a lot better. It's not great, but it's a lot better. Okay, so a genetically modified herpes virus appears to deliver a 1-2 punch to a rare and deadly form of brain cancer that killed U.S. Senator John McCain, new finding shows. Glioblastoma brain tumors are a cancer nightmare, with an average survival rate of 12 to 15 months from initial diagnosis and 4 to 6 months after reoccurrence, researchers said. McCain died in August 2018, 1 year after the doctor discovered he had an aggressive cancer. Despite 50 to 60 years of research and advance in surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, we haven't pushed the needle much at all in terms of survival, said senior researcher Dr. James Marquardt, chairman of neurosurgery at the University of Alabama at Brigham Young School of Medicine. Only 5 to 10% of patients live longer than 5 years. It's usually almost universally fatal. Okay. So, but an experimental cancer-fighting herpes simplex virus called G207 has shown promise to fight glioblastoma, and a paper published February 1st in Clinical Cancer Research provide a better idea how. It's been known that G207 directly attacks and kills brain tumor cells, Marquardt says. There's something different about tumor cells' defense against viruses, so that the change in the DNA that kept the virus from being infectious in normal human cells weren't present in the tumor cells, he said. As a result, the virus becomes selective for infecting and killing tumor cells. It turns out the virus has another trick up its sleeve. It robs glioblastoma of its ability to evade detection by the immune system. Highlighted by the virus, the brain cancer comes under attack from the body's natural defenses. It became apparent to us there was a really 1-2 punch, Marquardt said. The virus was invoking an immune response against the tumor as a secondary kind of anti-tumor response produced by the infection. Results from phase 1b clinical trial involved 6 adults glioblastoma patients with reoccurring or progressing tumor, provided Marquardt and his team with a new understanding of how to modify herpes virus attacks the cancer. So they can modify herpes virus to do whatever they want it to do. Okay. So imagine now creating biological agents for mind control, okay, or to attack certain parts of the human brain, okay. Like I said, if you want to look for these racist white supremacists, and Dr. Peter Bragan says it best. The very same people that are in positions to which can affect our lives, okay, are the ones that we give awards to, we praise, we celebrate, are the ones that are committing the most evil. Okay? So, just wanted to do this because, again, like I said, whenever I read certain articles, I post it, all of a sudden, they'll always send me these friend requests from these people from Nigeria. Okay? It's like Nigeria is the country in which most of these human bots are. Okay? It's like an army of them. And they get online, they get on social media and manipulate people's emotion, manipulate people's feelings. Excuse me. And they're used in the PSYOPs, psychological warfare against target individuals also. So we can't forget that. And also, before I end this video, I want to talk about particularly the shifting of sexual identities, particularly within Black women. Okay, more younger black women today are identifying as bisexuals. See, there's a reason why I read those articles. Okay, there's a reason why. Because you see, when you can see the enemy's tactics, when your mind has been opened to the truth, okay, when they attack you because they want to silence you, when they spread their rumors, okay, when they get their snitches to lie, to try to villainize you, okay, when they go around spreading their rumors, it is because they don't want to give you a chance to defend yourself. It is because they think that they can shut you up. Okay? When they try to promise me money, okay, for being silent, promise me women for being silent, and I said no. It's not going to happen. So, remember I talked about that it is women who identify as bisexuals, they are the ones who are spreading STDs amongst women the most, and men. Okay? So, last spring, one of us was talking to a heterosexual African American male who said he's been surprised to learn that his niece, Amani, whom he believed to be straight, was thinking of inviting a girl to the prom. Amani did not identify as lesbian, but hinted that she might be bi. Her uncle wondered whether Amani had always felt she was LGB or whether her declaration was part of some new trend amongst young people, perhaps thinking outside the box when it came to their sexualities. And you see, in America, the elites. Okay, now I'm a liberal, I'll tell you that, but I do have some conservativeness. I do have some old-fashionedness, which I like. You know, I'm more of a liberal though. Okay, and when I start to see, again, knowing what I know and the research that I've done, and understanding that, they have done experiments and where they can make people change their sexual preferences. Okay, and then I see over the past 2 decades, you have this huge increase, particularly among young black women who are identifying themselves as bisexual. Not also that, but you see that it's being promoted in the videos, particularly in the rap videos, right? And for the most part, it is the female rappers who are promoting these kind of sexual behaviors. Okay? Not to say the male rappers don't do it, but the black female rappers are doing it more and promoting that sexual lifestyle. Okay? So, indeed, Amani is among a growing number of young women of color who self-identify as bisexual or lesbian. But what this trend means for her and other women like her is complicated by how sociologists often measure and make sense of sexual minority identities. Consider a question that sounds deceptively simple, but has motivated a great deal of scholarship. How many gay, lesbian, and bisexual people are there in the United States? Estimating the size of sexual minority population is challenging for a collection of reasons related to Amani's statement. Where does Amani fits in the current social landscape of sexual identity? Would everyone encounter her story understand her sexuality in the same way? How will Amani ultimately decide to sexual identity? And will that identity stick or may it continue to change over the course of her lifetime? Okay? So what they are doing is causing confusion and using pleasure, sexual pleasure, as a means of changing people's sexual identities or sexual preferences, okay, because of the pleasure. So I've, again, showed you research and how one of the things that these neurologists, scientists have been doing over the past 70 years is experimenting with people's pleasure sensors, their erogenous zones. Okay. Also, we start to see a large increase. I'm not in the article now, but during the early 2000s of black men also identifying as bisexuals. And this is where you get the down low brothers from, because a lot of them are leading double lives. Okay. And I talk about technologies in which the human brainwave can be altered. Talk about silent sound, microwave radio frequencies. Okay. So, in a 2017 essay in Context, Amin Ghaziani explored the issue and difficulty of measuring sexuality and who to count as gay, straight, or anything else. Studying sexuality demographically depends on your ability to extract information from respondent that some may not want to share. We can ask survey questions about dimension of sexuality, and when we do receive widely different estimates, sometimes this has to do with how sexuality is being defined. Sexualities are composed of, among other things, desire, act, or behavior, and identities. And while one might expect people's sexual desire to influence their sexual behavior and the sexual identity they claim, the sociological fact of the matter is that these dimensions do not always line up neatly, as research since Lugman, Gannon, Michael, and Michaels, the social organization of sexuality, has borne out. People may engage in sexual practice at odds with their sexual desire, or lay claim to sexual identities that do not reflect their sexual practices. Now, doesn't that sound like confusion to you? Okay? And not everyone understands sexuality and their own sexuality, in particular, the same way. Sexualities are far more flexible than we often embrace. See, for instance, Lisa Diamond, sexual fluidity, and the Jane Ward not gay. See, this is again what I call bullshit, because this is what they're pushing, this sexual fluidity bullshit, right? Oh, I don't identify as straight, I don't identify as bisexual, I don't identify as gay, I identify as me. Okay, and I can have sex with whoever I want, whenever I want. It could be a man, a woman, it could be a animal. Okay, and we see that this is being pushed more and more within the black communities in which black people live in, particularly amongst young black women. Okay, so yeah, so let's look at see who identifies as straight, gay, or bisexuals, right? So the Gender Social Survey that included a question about sexual identity since 2008, asking respondents to classify themselves as gay, lesbian, homosexual, bisexual, heterosexual, or straight, or don't know. Between 2008 and 2016, those identified as lesbian, gay, or bisexual rose from 2.8% to 5.8%, a 100% increase in just 8 years. Distribution within these identities have changed too. In 2008, more people were identifying as lesbian or gay, 1.6%, then as bisexual, 1.1%. By 2016, bisexual has become the more prevalent sexual minority identity at 3% of respondents, compared to 2.4% identified as lesbian or gay. So we can see there's a rise, okay, from 2008 going up past 2016 of women who identify themselves as bisexual. Gay men, okay, we see that there was a dip and then there was an increase, and then this is a steady line, okay, with a slight incline, okay. Bisexual men, again, you have a rise from 2010 2012, and then you have again a slight incline going beyond 2016. And women who describe themselves as lesbians, okay, as you can see from 2014 to 2016, there was a rise, but that tapered off along the same line with gay men. Okay, so when you look, you'll see that bisexual women, sharp increase, gay men, as well as lesbian women from 2016 has relatively remained stable. Okay, and bisexual men has not increased from since 2012 going to 2016. Well, a very slight increase. Okay, so the greatest shift occurs among women identified as bisexual. The figure above reveals shift among lesbian women, gay men, and bisexual men alongside bisexual women. Between 2008 and 2016, the percentage of women classified themselves as bisexual more than double, from 1.5 to 3.9%. Bisexual women represents the largest change in sexual identification over time. And amongst women, bisexual is now a more prevalent identity than lesbian. Among men, however, bisexual is less popular as a sexual identity than gay. This is important because, as Delane Compton, Nicole Ferris, and Yu Ting Chang showed in a 2015 article, as a sexual identity category, bisexual is often presented as more nebulous than lesbian, gay, or straight classification. So let's look at the age group. Women and men aged 18 to 35 identifying as lesbian, gay, or bisexual 2008 to 2016. And you'll see here again, bisexual women again on the rise. So between those ages of 18 to 34 is where women has been identifying as bisexual. Okay, and that is important, particularly within the black population, where 23% of young black women identify as bisexuals. That's a huge chunk of the female population within the black in communities in which black people live. Okay, this is why you start to see a huge shift in the mentality of black women attitudes towards men. Okay, because they now also sexually liberated more so than white women. You know, we used to say white women are the most sexually liberated women, but that's not the truth. Okay, and I'm gonna show you guys the facts. Okay, so again, we talk about that. It says in the next figure shows that the change in women bisexual identities is largest among youngest age group, which, as Amani Uncle suggests, is also the group for whom sexual minority statuses more, more generally are the most common. Between 2008 and 2016, the proportion of 18 to 34-year-old identifying as lesbians or gay increased modestly from 2.7 to 3.0. Over the same period, the proportion of these young Americans identifying as bisexual doubled from 2.6% to 5.3%. And broken down by gender, the proportion of women in this age group identifying as lesbian actually declined from 3.4% to 3%, while the proportion identifying as bisexual more than doubled from 3.5% to 8% in the same period. Among this age group, there are almost as many bisexual identifying women as there are gay men, bisexual men, and lesbian women combined. Okay? So the largest group of people, right, in terms of sexual preferences and sexual identity are bisexual women. Okay? Aside from heterosexual male and heterosexual female, okay? I'm talking about the LGBTQ community. Okay? So we can further comprehend the complexity of shifts in the LGB population than when we consider race. While many, and this is important now, if you're a black person, you need to listen up really well. While many surveys find no statistically significant difference in the racial ethnic composition of LGB adults and non-LGB adults, one of the largest national representative survey collected by Gallup and analyzed by Gary T. Gates in 2014 reported that LGBT adults were less likely to be white when compared with it says LGBT adults were less likely to be white when compared to non-LGBT population. Consistent with the GSS data presented here, Gage shows larger differences by race amongst young people. Whether this is a cohort or period effect is not clear. Now, let's look at this. Women age 18 to 34 identifying as lesbians or bisexual by race from 2008 2016. So the darker blue is lesbians and the lighter blue is bisexual. Okay, so in 2008, whites, right, you see that in terms of percentage. So you have about 4 and about a little more than a half, so I would say 4.6, right, of white women between the age of 18 to 34 identify as lesbians, whereas 5% of that same group identify as bisexual. Same year, black women, you have there about a little over 7% identify as gay, but then you have almost 15% identified as bisexuals. Other groups, about 12%. Sorry, not 12%, about 7%. Okay, or 6%, depending on how you're looking at it. 2010. Now watch this. In 2010, we start to see a shift where white women now about almost 3%, okay, identify as lesbian, but about 7.5% now identified as bisexual. Others, you see a sharp decline where it's about, I would say, 4% or close to 4%. Okay, now 2012, white women who identify as lesbians, about 1%. But then you also see a slight drop in the percentage of white women who consider themselves to be bisexuals, right? So you talk about a 6%, right? Or almost 7%. Okay. For 2012, again, black women, you don't see any within the survey who identified as lesbian. Okay. And then also you see a decline okay in identification of bisexual by like 4%, almost 4%, and others again down about 2%. 2014, white women identify as lesbians, about 4%. Identify bisexual shoots up to about almost 13%. Black women identified as lesbians, about slightly more than 2%. As bisexual, about 4%, a little bit more than 4. Others, again, you see a increase. Okay, now here's the thing. Here's the shocker. 2016, white women holding steady at about 4%. Okay, actually 3%. Identified bisexual, about 9%. 2016, black women between the age of 18 to 34. We got about 12% identified as lesbians, but now they are almost 20%, about 18% or 19% identified as bisexual, and others, again, you start to see a rise in that. Okay, so these are just surveys that are taken, right? But it can give you an overall picture of what is happening. Okay, so you start to see the rise of music videos involving particularly black female artists promoting same sex relationship, threesomes, bisexual relationships, stuff like that in the videos. Okay, now these are the for male. So again, they've been pretty steady, but what we do see more so is a rise in young black women identifying as bisexual. To now, it's about 23% and possibly even more. Okay. So when I talk about the research that I've done, particularly Dr. Jose Delgado, Dr. Robert Heath, Dr. Robert Heath was doing this gay conversion thing, but he was also doing an experiment on black people to make them gay. Okay? Same thing with Dr. Jose Delgado, in which he used radio wave frequency to manipulate the mind of a 12-year-old child to make that child think that he was gay and to change his preference to being gay and being attracted to men. Okay? The research is out there. So when I talk about the war on black people, like I'm talking about this, it's multifaceted in many ways, and this is what we have to understand. Okay, and as TIs understand that, you know, they using this technology on us. They used the gay theme on me, didn't work because I was doing the research and I understand what these technologies can do, and I become so much aware of it. So it become harder for them to manipulate me in that aspect. Okay, so just wanted to talk about this because again, you know, whenever they do certain things, whenever I'm reading certain articles and they started with the target, and I'm so zoned in. This is why, you know, I'm doing this. It is after 4 in the morning, like 4:36 a.m. Okay, and like I said, when they target me in this matter, you know, I gotta expose a lot of things that they do. Okay, it's like they awaken something in me, you know, to go to find the information to talk about it. And like I said, let them keep targeting me. It's okay because their targeting fuels my fire to expose them and to make sure that they don't do this to anybody else. To make enough people aware. Though they keep sending me subliminal messages about how they've silenced me and all this stuff. Whatever. I'm still talking. So you haven't silenced me. Okay? All right, with that being said, I'll speak to you guys in the next video.